Hey guys, or welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a brand new video. Today is Monday and it is half-term week, so if you can hear the boys, it is because they are home from school this week. So yesterday I decided to give my hair a bit of a chop. The last time you'll remember around this time last year, I cut a fringe, and to this day I am still paying the price. I am still growing it out. I have had to trim it between now and then just to kind of blend it into the rest of my hair, but I would never be making that decision again. I'm never cutting a fringe again. That was awful, and yeah, still paying the price for that. But I've just chopped a fair chunk of my hair off. So before, I'd say it was almost down at my waist, but I felt like the ends were quite straggly and I just felt like I wasn't able to do much with it. So I just gave it a bit of a chop, maybe about 2 inches, and then just kind of trimmed my face framing layers to give it a little bit more shape at the front. I haven't done the most perfect of jobs. I'm not a hairdresser and I can't reach the back myself, but I think it looks fairly even. It might dip a little bit in the back, but I'm not too fussed about that. I feel like it's alright. I'm still kind of on the fence about whether or not I want to thin the ends out, because I do have quite thick hair and the ends are quite blunt. But what I'm thinking is I cut it because I didn't like how straggly the ends were getting, so I know over time the ends will start to feel thinner anyway, so I may just leave it thick as it is now. It feels much healthier. I did not touch the shortest part of my fringe. All I did was kind of blend it all into the rest of my hair. It's almost at the point where I can actually keep it behind my ears now. I have just a little bit that kind of flops forward every now and again. So yeah, cut my hair yesterday. I also did my nails, or filled my nails. I had a little bit of a pamper afternoon since Josh was home, and I needed it because we had a pretty rough few days. If you have been following my Instagram, you'll know that Avery has been in hospital again. She is doing a whole lot better now, even though she still sounds awful. She still has an awful cough and a lot of mucus, but believe it or not, she was much worse than this. She has a chest infection, but I will sit down a little bit later on today and tell you what happened and why we actually ended up in hospital. But she was discharged on Saturday, so we're just really glad to be home again. Her feed has just finished and I think she is ready to get out. She is on antibiotics though, so I keep having to check her nappy like every half an hour or so, because she's doing the most radioactive coloured fluorescent poos, so they stain everything. And the worst bit about it, well, you can take it as a positive or a negative, they don't smell, so there's no warning for us. So she could potentially leak all over her playmat or all over our legs, and we'd be none the wiser until we checked. So we're having to keep checking her nappy every half an hour. Josh has gone to work today. He had Friday off, but luckily he didn't need to take any more time off than that. But yeah, she's doing much better. We're all glad to have her home. But yeah, I'll fill you in more when I get the chance to sit down. But I need to flush Avery's feed down and get her out of this chair. So it's currently 11 o'clock and I've just changed my 4th, maybe 5th fluorescent poo of the day. What would I put in? Let's take you back to my last video, my evening routine. You would have heard me say at the end that I thought Avery was getting poorly. She definitely was, and that night about 3 in the morning her SATS monitor started going off and her heart rate was really elevated. I checked her temperature and she was actually running really hot. I didn't need to use a thermometer, I could just feel by her skin that she had a temperature. So it was lucky really that her SATS monitor did wake me up, because I could then go downstairs and get some paracetamol. So I gave her paracetamol and all was fine for the rest of the night. Avery was okay in the morning. Her temperature seemed to have come back down a bit, which was great. So I honestly thought that it was just a little blip and we were over the worst and it was going to be fine. Bearing in mind the last time she had a temperature, only a couple of weeks ago when she was poorly, she did not have a seizure. So I didn't know if maybe this was the back end of the same illness just getting worse again. But the next morning she seemed to be okay until sort of maybe just before lunchtime-ish. She started to get hot again, her fever started to go up. I did check her temperature with a thermometer, so confirmed that her temperature did go up. Gave her some paracetamol and I gave her some ibuprofen with her feed, fed her. She did throw up a little bit that feed, but she hadn't thrown up in the morning. I think the ibuprofen and paracetamol managed to bring the temperature down slightly. I think it came down to maybe low 38s, and yeah, she seemed to be struggling with her secretions. So I did a nebulizer, I did some chest physio and some suction, and that seemed to clear her out a bit. I checked temperature again and it had come down to 37.9, so I thought, great, the fever is breaking, she's gonna be fine. So I laid her down on her mat. Yeah, I laid her down on her mat. Even though her fever had started to come down, I was still a little bit apprehensive because her breathing did seem a bit laboured. She still seemed a little bit drowsy. At this point, I had already spoken to Avery's epilepsy nurse as well, because if you didn't watch my evening routine, she did start having the odd few twitches again, and those twitches for us we feel are epileptic, even though they've not been confirmed. We feel they probably are epileptic. So I had already spoken to the epilepsy nurse that morning and she just said have a low threshold to take her into PDOBs, and I absolutely did. Had her fever not have started to break, I would have taken her into PDOBs, I would have taken her in to get checked. But I laid her down on the floor, and just to be on the safe side, I decided to bring her SATS monitor downstairs and just attach it to her. Just because I was in and out of the room, I didn't have my eyes on her all the time. I wanted to make sure that her SATS were being monitored. I laid her down and she started to fall to sleep, so I thought, okay, great. Sleep's going to be good for her. She's probably so tired from all the coughing and being sick and having a fever. So she fell to sleep. I left the room to start setting up things like her feed and whatnot. I'd literally primed her feed and had drawn up her water in her syringes because I had to go pick the boys up from school and I was getting everything ready for feeding her when we came home. And then her SATS monitor started going off, so I ran in and it was her heart rate again. Her heart rate had gone high. At this point I wasn't really panicking so much because her heart rate had done the same thing the night before and she'd been fine. But I went over to her and her eyes gave it away. She was 100% having a seizure, but she coughed, and she's never coughed during a seizure before. So I kind of lifted her head, tried to get her to respond to me, but she wasn't responding to me. Her breathing was really heavy and I was trying to look for other signs because at the moment it was just her eyes, and I was still trying to figure out, is she just really drowsy and she has a fever again, or is she having a seizure? So I started to feel her limbs, and I noticed that her fists were clenching and unclenching in a rhythm. So I was pretty certain at that point that she was having a seizure. So, oh, Pudding. Okay. The first thing I actually did was started my stopwatch. This was so that I knew when 5 minutes had hit so that I could administer her rescue med if I needed to, and then I called 999. They asked if she was breathing. I said she was breathing. They asked if she was awake. I said yes, but she's not responsive, she's having a seizure. I explained a little bit. They asked me a lot of questions, the usual stuff. I say usual, I think it's just usual to us now because we've done it more than once. But they asked about her colour, her breathing. I explained that she had a SATS monitor on all the while her seizure was going on. Now the weird thing is Josh actually walked through the door, bearing in mind he's not normally home until about 5-6 o'clock, and this was about 3 o'clock, 3:15. Josh walked through the door as I was calling 999 and talking to 999. He said he just had a feeling that he needed to come home early. Now, the last time I'd spoken to him, I told him that I'd given Avery her nebulizer and her temperature had started to drop a little bit. So there was no reason for Josh to, you know, need to come home at that point. But he said he just felt like he needed to come home early. And oddly enough, he walked through the door the second I was calling 999. So naturally he rushed in, covered in muck and dirt from work, but at this point we just really didn't care. There was so much dirt on this white carpet. Josh is very much, if something happens to Avery and something's going on, he just wants to fix it, and he wants to fix it now. So he was really eager to get the rescue med into her, like as soon as he saw her seizing, but I managed to get him to hold off. I told him it has to be 5 minutes. I kind of signaled to Josh, sort of kind of over the phone and watching Avery, you know, the boys, because they were coming out of school at this point and I wasn't there to pick them up. Josh then disappeared. I thought he was waiting outside for the ambulance. Turns out he had actually gone and rushed and got the boys from school, which I'm so grateful for, because I was telling the emergency services, I'm really concerned my boys will be waiting for me at school. Is there any way we can get a message to their school? And she just said that once the ambulance arrived, I'll be able to hang up the line, you'll be free to call the boys' school. But Josh was getting them, so that was a relief. He got home just as the paramedics arrived and kind of ushered the boys straight upstairs to go and play. But I'm kind of getting ahead of the story here. So she carried on seizing, and I noticed there was a bit of a break in her breathing. Her breath just stopped for about 30 seconds, and I said this to the emergency services. I said she stopped breathing and her SATs had started to drop. They went down to about 80. After about sort of 20 to 30 seconds, her breathing started again. Her SATs still stayed in the low 90s, and I was kind of explaining this on the phone as it was kind of going along. And then 5 minutes hit and I started to administer Avery's midazolam. As I started to push the syringe into her mouth, she threw up everywhere, so I'm pretty convinced she didn't really get any of it. I think I maybe had, I don't know, not even a fifth of the syringe left after she'd vomited. So I just pushed that into her cheek just so that she had something, but how much of it actually went in, I really don't know. I don't think it was much. But luckily at around 6.5, 7 minutes, she started to come out of the seizure and her oxygen started to go back up. And just as that happened, the paramedics arrived. So they came in, they saw that her oxygen was looking good at that point. They checked her temperature and it had shot back up. I think it was about 38.9. So it shot back up very, very quickly. Whether or not the seizure pushed it to go back up that fast, or it shot up quickly and that triggered the seizure, I don't know. They checked her blood sugar levels. They did a little kind of heel prick blood test and checked her levels. They said they were fine. And after the seizure, Avery just fell straight to sleep. She wasn't responsive still. We couldn't kind of shake her awake. She was out cold. She was so tired after that, and the paramedics said we should take her in. We explained to them that because she was post-ictal and she was no longer seizing, it was best for Avery to go to PDOPS because she has open access, and not to A&E, because the last time we went to A&E with Avery post-ictal, we were there for 4 hours just for them to say we feel a bit out of our remit. I think she should go up to PDOPS where the paediatricians are more specialised. And they agreed to take us to PDOPS on the condition that I called them on the way. So we got into the ambulance. Josh carried Avery into the ambulance for me and passed it to me on the gurney. And I went in the ambulance with Avery. Josh had blocked our driveway with his work truck. Obviously when he parked up, he didn't know this was all going on. So the ambulance had to completely block our road. By our house it's very narrow and only one car can really go past at a time. 2 cars can't kind of cross each other. But the ambulance literally blocked the entire road, and this was at school run time too, so it was very busy. And I could see quite a few people that had kind of stopped and were kind of staring. I think at that point I didn't really care though, but I called PDOPS on the way, explained the situation. They asked her name and I said her name, and the person on the phone kind of went, oh hiya Chrissy, it's so and so. Turns out it was actually Avery's consultant paediatrician who was on the ward that day, which was an absolute godsend, because if you don't know, Avery's consultant paediatrician was the paediatrician on call the night Avery went into cardiac arrest. So she has been there from the very beginning. She saw it all happen. So I take a lot of comfort in her because of that. So I was really relieved to hear that she was on call that day. So we took her into P-Dobs. The paramedics did hand over with the nurses, and then the nurses all kind of started to flood in then to do Avery's obs. Avery was still pretty much out cold. She was very drowsy, very sleepy. My nerves had kind of eased at this point though. I knew she'd come out of the seizure and I felt a bit better for that, and I knew that she would be tired afterwards. The nurse that was on shift that day also knew Avery. So she took a very kind of informal approach on doing Avery's obs and checking what she needed to check and everything, and I think she had maybe like a trainee doctor with her, and she even said to him, don't worry, I wouldn't normally be this all over the place, it's just we know Avery. So that was really nice and really comforting. So the majority of Avery's sats all looked okay, aside from her kind of respiratory rate. It was obviously a bit high. Her temperature was elevated. Oh dear, oh lovely. Oh, good girl, get it up. Good girl. Good girl. Have we got it up? Yeah. Yeah, her respiratory rate was a bit high, her breathing was a bit laboured, but other than that her sats were okay. Actually no, tell a lie, her oxygen was on the lower side, so they did give us a mask with oxygen to kind of give to Avery as and when she needed it. And then they decided to put a cannula in, so Josh actually asked me if he could go into the kind of the room where they do that this time, because normally I would, but he wanted to go in with her this time, so I said that was fine. By the way, I've not even mentioned the fact that Josh had arrived at this point. He'd followed up in the car with the boys. The boys, they don't get fazed by this kind of scenario anymore. I think because they've been through it so many times, and they know that every time, you know, Avery's been okay and she's been able to come home after a little while, they're kind of inoculated from it now. So the boys were fine. They kind of sat quietly and played on their tablets, which they seemed really happy to do. Josh went in to the room for Avery to get her cannula fitted, and I took the boys for a little walk then around the hospital, went to get them some food and whatnot. After Avery had her cannula, she was moved to her own room because they were going to admit her. She was definitely going to be there at least for overnight. Her oxygen was still low, so I think the next things they did were kind of all the tests. They pulled out some of her snot for to be sent off for kind of markers for viral infections. They took bloods to do blood gases. They were checking for bacterial infections, all of the tests. And then they actually put some probes into Avery's nose. So instead of the oxygen being in the mask, they decided to do the kind of probes in the nose, and they kind of attached it to like a vaporizer. They said because her oxygen isn't picking up without the oxygen, it looked like she was most likely going to be on the oxygen overnight. They wanted to make sure it didn't dry her out, so it was kind of attached to like a vaporizer. I think Josh said they called it positive pressure. So she had that done. I went home to quickly sort out the boys' clothes for the next day, because they actually had like a rock star day at school. So I went to sort out their clothes. I packed myself a quick overnight bag and headed straight back to hospital. And then Josh took the boys home for the night, and he would do the kind of school run routine in the morning. So we settled down for the night. At this point, Avery again was still very, very drowsy, so she went straight off to sleep. She had stirred a little bit and kind of woken up, but she just looked dazed. She had gone back to sleep at this point, so I settled in for the night. The nurses were obviously still coming in every now and again, administering kind of ibuprofen, paracetamol. It did take a little while for her fever to come down. They started her on IV fluids, which they did the last time she had to go into hospital actually. And then in the morning I had a chance to kind of catch up with the nurses about what kind of changed overnight. Her oxygen still wasn't at a very good level, considering she was getting a little bit of help with oxygen. I think it was only sort of 25%, so it wasn't much, but her oxygen was still sitting at around 93, which I said to them, you know, it might be okay considering she's poorly, but not with the fact that she is getting that extra help. I would, you know, I'd like to see that come up a bit more before I was happy. And turns out her blood pressure also dropped a little bit throughout the night. So they were keeping a close eye on her blood pressure as well, and I think they also changed her IV fluids from the standard kind of glucose and sodium solution to one that had potassium in it as well. The nurse said she wasn't sure why, but she'd imagine that her potassium might have come up a little bit low on her blood gas if that is what they decided to do. In the morning her blood pressure did come back up, luckily, and the day really not a lot happened. So obviously Josh came in once he had dropped the boys off from school. He'd managed to take the day off work. The nurses were coming in to do obs every hour because she was on oxygen. The chest physiotherapists came in, the respiratory physiotherapist came in and did some sort of chest physio with Avery while she was in as well. And we also obviously had a chance to speak to the doctor on his rounds. So we kind of went through what happened, and I don't think he wanted to do anything without speaking to her consultants first. So he did speak to Avery's neurologist, and I know it's all stuck there, isn't it? So he did speak to Avery's neurologist, and her neurologist didn't want to change anything, which I was really shocked about. He basically said, this is the doctor, not the neurologist. The doctor said that the neurologist had said, if the seizures start to become a problem, then we will think about adjusting, but for now let's keep it the same because she's poorly. And I'm thinking to myself, and I think I said it to the doctor as well, so this isn't bad enough. We've got to wait for her to have another, and then another, and then another seizure before they'll change anything. And I don't really think the doctor knew what to say. You know, he's not Avery's specialist. He doesn't know her very well. So I kind of, at that point, kind of just accepted that I would just speak to Avery's usual specialists in the week and kind of go through everything with them instead of talking to the doctor on the ward that, you know, just didn't really know a lot about Avery. But her temperature was still a bit up and down that day. She still wasn't quite herself, and she still wasn't back onto her feeds. Her oxygen, again, was still staying below 95, so she did stay in for another night, and the next morning she perked right up again. Not quite like herself. I mean, even now you can probably tell she's not herself. But all of her SATs came up, she was taken off the oxygen, and we were able to start her feeds again. So that day she was discharged. This was Saturday, by the way. So we were able to bring her home. She had 2 courses or 2 lots of the IV antibiotics while she was in hospital, and she's now on oral antibiotics until tomorrow. So we just keep an eye on her now. I think she's over the worst of it. She's just going to struggle with this nasty mucousy cough for a little while. I have spoken to Avery's epilepsy nurse today, and I said to her, if the neurologist doesn't want to change her regular medicines just yet, then maybe we can think about keeping hold of a breaker medicine. So not necessarily a rescue med, just a breaker medicine that we can just give to her when she is poorly and maybe starts to get twitchy and spikes of fever. A bit like clobazam, or I think the neurologist mentioned diazepam. I don't know, it's okay. I don't know what the difference is, and I don't know why he would suggest one over the other. But she's gonna speak to the neurologist now about that and then come back to me with an answer. But I think if we're not gonna change her regular medicines, then I do think we need something for when she's poorly. And I understand why they don't want to, you know, just immediately jump some of her medicines. A, she's poorly, and it's really not a good idea to change seizure medications, you know, while she's still poorly because of side effects and not being able to pick up on them and whatnot. And B, because we don't, you know, we don't want to keep her on a high dose of anti-epileptic medications if we really don't need to. We don't want her to be doped up, you know, 24/7. We would like to find a happy medium, and if just giving her a medicine that makes her drowsy only when she's spiking fevers and is poorly keeps the seizures away, then I think that might be a better alternative. I was speaking to Josh about it yesterday, and he seemed on board with that idea. So I will update you when I hear from the epilepsy nurse and let you know what the plan is going to be. But yeah, so another seizure. At this point, the pattern seems to be sort of every couple of months. The last big seizure like this she had was towards the end of June, and then I think she had one, I can't remember, I think it might have been April, May time, and then before that she had one in March. So they are becoming regular. They seem to be becoming kind of part of something we have to get used to, but this is why I would really like to try a break of medicine just to see if we can stop them when she's poorly. But yeah, so lots of cuddles now until she gets better. We haven't resumed therapies just yet, apart from chest physio. I did get her on her tummy over the weekend just because I thought it might help her clear some of her secretions. I'm considering putting her in a stander today. I'm gonna see how she is, because you know she's still quite tired. Not so much for kind of the physio aspect, but just to see if it helps with her kind of secretions and her chest. So I'll see how she is, and I might put her back in the stander today. Another hospital experience, another admission, another seizure. It's not nice, is it? But she's okay, and she's home, and hopefully she's over the peak. She's coming to the end of it. And Eli is screaming like a chimpanzee. So it is, my watch has died, I don't know why I'm looking at it. It is almost time for Avery's feed, I'm pretty sure, so I'm gonna go and get that together and feed little miss, and hopefully she will have a sleep then, because I think she needs one, don't you? Hey sweet girl. On a much lighter note, I thought this afternoon we could crack into Eli's cupcake mix thing that I bought him for his birthday. He asked for a baking kit for his birthday, and this is what I bought him because he likes slime, and I thought this would be quite a cool thing to do on the build up to Halloween, and I thought this would also be a really good time to get little Missy in her stander so that she can watch the boys do this. So Eli, shall we put your apron on that you got for your birthday?
Yes, sorry.
The boys are having a pyjama day today. I asked Eli if he wanted to get dressed, and he said no, but we're not going anywhere today, so it doesn't really matter. There's your apron.
I will go get that.
Okay. So it says all you really need for this kit is butter, milk, water, and an egg. We have all of those things, which is very lucky, because I didn't actually check before today. So this is a grown-up apron, so it might be a bit big on Zach. Zach's donning the Christmas apron. Right, so Eli, it's your kit. Do you want to get everything out and have a look at what's in it?
No.
Cupcake cases.
Cupcake cases.
What does that say on it? It might say something.
Buttercream mix.
So this is the slime mix. There might actually be instructions on this. Let's have a look.
I think there needs to be more water.
It says in the instructions first, put the cupcake cases into a cupcake tray. Do you want to give Zach half and then he can do some?
Yeah, how much are there? There we go.
Let's move that over to the side. Right, now we need the cake mix, which is this one, I think. So let me cut it open. Can you put all of that into that bowl?
Yeah. Oh god, wait, Mummy, the water's for the slime.
I know.
And is this for the slime?
No, this is the cupcake mix.
Oh, you dribbled it. That's not how you do it like a pro.
Good job.
Lol. Milk's easy. And then you whisk it, whisk it, whisk it.
Does he get a mix? Why does he get to like put two in and mix fast?
Because it's his kit.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. Are you going to let Zach have a turn mixing though, buddy?
Give me a sec, I need to mix. We just need to scrape it all up and mix it.
He's a mixer style.
Show Avery.
Looky.
So you're
She
about
can't
style
see.
now.
Just show her.
So you're about style
Oh,
now.
is it too
Dad.
heavy? Let me show her.
So you're about
No,
style
no,
now.
What's
Dad.
that? What's that? What's that? Oh, good reaching, Purse. Do you want to mix?
Yeah, good job, baby.
There we go. Avery mix. Avery mix.
That's just cute. Cutie times.
Go.
Oh yeah, guys, you can
Everyone
copy this if you have one as well, if you want to.
Okay guys, one thing to say, like the video and subscribe.
And that's our little half-term afternoon activity done. I must say, as an adult, the cakes look disgusting. To be fair, I tried a little bit of Eli's without the slime on it. The cake itself is good, the frosting is good, the slime smells like straight up apple. I'm not a big lover of apple flavoured things, so yeah, I think I'm going to give them a miss, and I'm pretty sure the boys are going to be the only ones in this house eating those cupcakes, but it was a nice way to sort of spend a bit of time with them and let them do something fun, because they've done really, really well with Avery being in hospital and everything. Zach did spend the weekend with my mum. She likes to have them one by one so she can spend good quality time with each of them. So Zach's had a good weekend, but I mean, Eli has too, but it's definitely been a little bit more slower pace for us. So that's just something nice for them to do. With Halloween coming up, you might see just there. We will be doing some pumpkin carving. Maybe I'll include that in the next vlog, but I am going to close this one out here just because I know I yabbed on for ages when I was talking about Avery's seizure and whatnot. So this video is probably already quite long. So I will see you guys in the next vlog. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss it. And with that said, I'll see you in a few days. Bye guys.